Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio everybody. What is going on? It is Galeriot here, and welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi video. And today, we are going to be reading through Fujino Omori's interview for the 10th anniversary of Danmachi. He did one very recently on the 27th of October with Real Sound. It has been a couple of days since I've actually come to this. To be quite honest, I initially thought that this interview was actually a voiced interview, so I was like, I'm gonna wait till somebody fully translates it or dubs it over or something like that. But actually in reality it was in written format. So we are here to read through the interview. I do also have a sort of a synopsis of the interview as well through the Reddit as well. So we're gonna be checking that out as well. So of course, if you guys go on to enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for more Danmachi and other related Danmachi content, be it light novels, anime, gaming, you name it. Get subscribed for that. And of course, let me know your thoughts on the interview down below in the comment section below. I'm kind of curious to see what you guys have to say down below in regards to the key points of this interview. Now, I already got spoiled on one part of the interview, and I'll talk about it when we get to it, of course, right? But it is a very interesting thing to have come out of the interview, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing what else is in this interview. Now, on top of that, I should also mention that this Saturday on the 4th of November, if you guys didn't already know, the live event for Danmachi is happening. They're calling it the Vesta Party, of course, right? And it is a very, very special event that's taking place in Tokyo, and you can be present there live or you can watch it online as well. However, you do need to pay 3,500 yen, or that is about $35 basically, in order to actually watch the live stream. So keep that in mind. Well, I say $35, it's actually a lot less thanks to the, very bad exchange rate for Japanese yen, of course, right? So if you take a look, Japanese yen to USD, and we look at 3,500 yen, it's about $23. So if you guys are willing to splurge that little bit of cash, you can obviously buy a ticket and watch it online. Of course, it will be archived as well, so if you can't catch it live, if you have bought the ticket, you can still watch it in an archived format until the 10th of November. I'm personally considering buying it. I'm not sure yet, to be quite honest, because obviously that day I'm actually working at my job, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be actually able to watch the thing live. So I might buy it later on and actually watch it when I'm able to do so, and maybe I'll make a reaction video to it. But of course, if there is any news that drops on that day, I will be there to cover it. But just to let you guys know that this is taking place on the 4th of November on this Saturday weekend basically, so keep that in mind. All right, let's get to the interview now, and let's check out what Fujino Omori has to say. Danmachi 10th anniversary Fujino Omori interview. Right and wrong is the important keyword now. Very interesting point here he's making basically, because right and wrong, I mean, it's always the case when it comes to, especially when you're writing a light novel that has garnered so many fans, right? Because at the end of the day, we say that Danmachi is a very niche anime and a niche light novel series and all that jazz. In Japan, it's one of the most popular light novel series ever. So obviously, there is that level of expectation and a level of, interest as well that will, make Omori sensei question what is right or what is wrong in his series. And it's the same thing with even the editors looking at Omori sensei's work, and, maybe they might want to make some changes and they'll be like, this is right, this is wrong. And that's a very interesting dynamic, because even in the community itself, we're so divisive when it comes to some of these light novels. For example, light novel 18 is still, I think, to this day, one of the most divisive light novels, because some of the community loves it, some of the community absolutely hates it. So it's quite interesting to see that even Fujino Omori feels the same way about this whole right and wrong, situation, of course, and the way the series is progressing. And as we're approaching the end game of the series, there is that factor of identifying what's right and wrong. All right, let's continue on. Fujino Omori won the 4th GA Bunko Grand Prize for Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, and 2023 marks the 10th anniversary of his debut with GA Bunko. In addition to the main story, the Danmachi series has also featured side stories and spin-offs, and has also been adapted into manga and anime, making it a very popular work. We spoke to Fujino Omori, who achieved the feat of publishing a series of works for 13 consecutive months about the circumstances of leading up to their debut, his thoughts on Danmachi, and his thoughts on the media mix. I think the her is mistranslation because, of course, we're using Google Translate to translate from Japanese to English to make it easier for us. So, yeah. I believe in my experience as a writer who has been working for 10 years. Wow. That's a very, very strong statement from Fujino Omori, because I thought that he would be a little bit more modest about his writing skills, because at the end of the day, right, I get his his belief in himself, of course, right? Especially because he's not only just written for the main series of Danmachi, as they said, he's worked on side stories with Sword Art Toria, Familiar Chronicles, done Mimo stories, of course, right? So I guess in that regards, you can see that he's got a lot of belief in himself, because arguably Dan Mimo's anniversary stories and even some of the, Christmas events and stuff like that, they're novels in itself, right? I mean, we've seen Astray Record is a 3-novel series, Argonaut 2-novel series, Aedes Vesta is probably a 2 or 3-novel series as well. Same with Knights of Fianna. So there is a lot of experience there for Fujino Omori in his writing, arguably, right? So yeah, I feel like that's a very strong statement, in all honesty. Please tell us your thoughts on the 10th anniversary of your debut with Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon in 2013? Fujino Omori, hereinafter referred to as Omori. When I debuted, I was praised for being young, and even now I'm still considered young, but I've realized that I'm not like that. Keep it up. There are a lot of new and interesting works and writers coming out of from GA Bunko and other publishers, and I may be a bit arrogant, but I feel like I'm in a position where I'm being chased, or that the people at the bottom are pushing me forward. I really feel that I have to sit down and work harder than ever. As a reader, I feel like 10 years have passed in a blink of an eye, with one interesting development after another. But Mr. Mori has created something like a wall over the past 10 years. Have you ever felt that? Speaking recently, volume 18 of the main story was a wall for me, and it took me the longest time to write. I rewrote it about 4 times. Now, this is something I got spoiled on. So, volume 18 was rewritten 4 times, and like I said, volume 18 was a very divisive light novel, and I mean, we knew that this was the case for sure, because, and it was going to be the case even before the release of the light novel. I remember talking about, the release of volume 18 before the actual launch happened and we started doing spoiler talks and everything. I think the spoiler talk is one of the most viewed videos on my channel. Let me actually check. Let's check. Galeriot. I think the spoiler talk which I had with everybody, well, not with everybody, but by myself, and then of course we had a whole, interaction with one another and the comments section, and I did a community reaction and everything. I think it's one of my most viewed videos, in all honesty. Yeah, it is literally like my 6th most viewed video. Yeah, it is my 6th most viewed video. Honestly, it was one of my favorite videos to make, because that, I think, was like the moment where it was like, I see the vision of Omori sensei, and I know I'm gonna be, going up against a lot of people's thoughts. A lot of people are probably gonna be thinking differently compared to me. And I noticed it and I realized it because when I went through the Reddit to make that video and, went through the comment section of that video, I realized that, oh my days, a lot of people have a different perspective with this light novel compared to me. And that was never the case in light novels before that. Light novels before that, I think everybody had a very, unanimous thought process when it came to the light novel series and their thoughts on each of the light novels that came out, each of the volumes that came out, right? I think the only one before volume 18 was volume 7 with the whole thing with Haruhime and the red light district and everything, and of course, Haruhime's backstory, right, where some people were okay with the changes and some people weren't happy with the fact that, oh, Haruhime is actually a virgin out of all of the things that happened at the end of the light novel and everything, right? And it's like, well, volume 18 is beyond that, I feel, because everybody has a very differing opinion, in regards to the light novel. So yeah, of course it was my fault, but I felt a bit of stress because I couldn't get the book out right away. However, I think the readers were even more excited than that. I heard the words waiting on social media and I felt really sorry. It really felt like I was fighting an incredibly strong enemy alongside the main character Belle and the others. Why did it take so long? Omori. I think it's because we've been doing it for 10 years. Okay, spoilers, by the way. Now, this is where we're gonna get into spoilers. So, if you want to skip this section, I will probably put in a bit of a chapter here, basically, where there will be no spoilers, basically, for the foreseeable future. So, there will be a chapter here where it's a spoiler section and then back to non-spoilers, basically. Okay, so let's get into it. I think it's because we've been doing it for 10 years. Volume 18 is about Belle's fight against a very powerful familiar called Freya Familia, and I'd already decided to write it. However, in the early days, starting around the 4th volume, there was a lot of foreshadowings leading up to that point, and it felt redundant to collect them all. It was extremely difficult to create the pleasure of turning the pages, and I had a really hard time connecting between what I wanted to do and what I wanted to do. Okay, what I needed to do, and because what I ended up doing what I wanted to do, it became so thin. I had GA Bunko use some magical printing techniques to force me to release it, lol. I mean, this is, I assume, his referencing to the fact that it's a huge light novel. It's the largest light novel, I think. Volume 18 is the biggest light novel in the series. On the other hand, in the beginning, you didn't have much trouble and were able to write easily. Omori, that's right. I get the impression that the difficulty increases with each volume. Before volume 18, volume 10, which featured the Xenos edition, was really difficult. And after that, there was volume 14, which was a bit bigger. There are parts where I set hurdles like, let's just try not to lose the previous story and let's do something different from past works. As I try to overcome them, the hurdles are constantly rising and I find myself trying to do something different. I feel like I'm strangling my neck. The side story is a little different, but in the main story of Danmachi, that ego is really carried through. As a result of being too particular about my work as a writer, the pace of publication has become slower and slower. I mean, yeah, it has been slower and slower. I mean, especially the last couple of years, there were no light novels. He was fully dedicated to making works for Danmimo more so, and then Danmachi and Sword Art Online kind of got pushed to the side a little bit because of that. I think 2021 to 2023, there were no light novels, basically, I think, if I recall correctly. So it makes sense, and especially, I think, obviously, like he said, Volume 18 was one of those light novels which is so hard to bring everything together. It was one of those light novels where, I mean, we said it, we were talking about it in the spoiler talk as well. It's such a momentous moment, right? It's a momentous moment is the best way to really put it, and to emphasize on that fact, in that, there's just so much happening and so many plot lines coming together that it's really difficult to execute, and it will lead to differing perspectives. A very subjective light novel compared to the usual light novel, which is, in all honesty, very objective. Everybody has the same feeling towards the previous light novels. Come volume 18, it becomes a lot more trickier, right? So yeah, I think it is very fair that it does become slower as time progresses, and I expect the endgame stuff is gonna take a while, man. It's not gonna be as soon as like 5 years from now or 3 years from now. I don't think so. I think it's gonna be longer than that, in all honesty. Alright, let's take a look at this. The series Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon Guidance Sword Art Online, which depicts the story of Ais Wallenstein, the sword princess whom Belle admires, also has a two-sided relationship with the maid story, so it was hard to write. I think they are having a hard time. That's true. However, I personally think that Ais's past needs to be revealed in the main story. Okay, if I didn't do that, I would be doing a disservice to those who read the main story. So there you go. Ai's arc is still confirmed. I think a lot of people, especially after the events of volume 16 to 18 and stuff, right, are becoming a little bit more impatient with Ai's arc and Ai's development with Belle. But I do think that it is coming. I mean, Omori Sensei himself is getting ready to push towards that effectively, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see where it goes from here and how it goes from here. On the other hand, it is also true that we would like to offer something different from the main story to those who are reading Gaiden. Because of that, the story of Sword Art Online has now shifted to focus on Lafia. She's an elf mage from the same Loki familiar who respects Ais. That's right. Also, unlike the main story, I started Sword Art Online at a stage where I wasn't completely sure of my butt. I had been vaguely thinking about the mastermind Ennio, but that story was resolved in volume 12. There's just one more story I want to do in the future, and I'm fine up to that point, but I'm thinking about what will happen after that and whether it should end there. I feel like I'm really groping my way through the writing. Okay, so this is a very interesting point. So he wants to do one more arc at least for Sword Art Online, right? And of course, we had a Lafia-centric light novel in Sword Art Oratoria 13. In Sword Art Oratoria 14 was a little bit more backstory for the Loki Familia, right? Specifically Reveria, Finn, and Gareth, right? So I assume that there will be one more arc coming soon. Maybe there might be an interlude once again with Volume 15 potentially with Sword Art Oratoria. But I feel like, and I think a lot of people would agree with me on this one, Volume 12 would have been a great place to end Sword Art Oratoria, to be quite honest. It was such an iconic light novel, I think, when it comes to the Danmachi franchise. For a lot of people, it's probably one of their favorites, if not their favorite light novel. Personally, I think it's probably in the top 3, at least for me. I wouldn't say it's number 1, but it's definitely top 3 for me, personally. And I feel like they could have easily ended Sword Art Oratoria there, to be quite honest. They could have easily ended Lafia's story there. Maybe they could have done more Sword Art Oratoria light novels, but not necessarily in the form of arcs. You know, I don't mind Sword Art Oratoria 13 being that aftermath of what happens to Lafia. Sword Art Oratoria 14 being focused on Gareth, you know, Reveria, and Finn. Maybe 15 can be more about the dungeoneering side of things, exploring the dungeon a little bit more, showing us the dungeon a bit more. Because let's be real, with Belt's side, it's all about, you know, Orario as a whole, the world as a whole, instead of just the dungeoning. He does do some dungeoneering and stuff, right, of course, but at the end of the day, his story has always been more than just the dungeon, especially after the events of Volume 6, in my personal opinion. Since the events of Volume 6, it's always been more than just the dungeon. Of course, he's had things that linked him back to the dungeon, Xenoses and so on and so forth, but it feels like it's always been more than just the dungeon. Whereas Sword Art Oratoria, the Loki Familia, I mean, they're dungeoneering Familia. We know that their aim is to explore the dungeon more and more and more. And I think that would be the best way to go about it, in all honesty. And that way, we as the reader can also experience the dungeon in all its glory as well, right? So I think that would be a good way to go about it. I don't think he needs to necessarily do more arcs, in all honesty. On the other hand, regarding the main story, it means the ending is firmly decided. The place where the main story would end was already decided before I applied for the GA Bunko Award, and that hasn't changed. However, we are still at the stage where there is a slight detour. I assume by that he means that there's a slight detour, as in they're taking a bit of a side step before they get to the end game, which is also fair. I think that's okay. Also, there were parts where I was writing with a bit of live feel to it. The things that haven't changed, but we've been flexing on other things. Maybe I should try to rely on my experience as a writer who has been working on for 10 years. There were parts of the story that you expanded on and changed. Regarding Haruhime in Volume 7 of the main story, the story was planned to be a little bit more extreme since the place is a brothel. However, at the end, the editor in charge told me that it was no good, and I argued, even though the stage is set in the brothel, that's not true. But in the end, Haruhime ended up smiling. After receiving feedback from readers who said it was good, I started to think it was a good idea. It makes me think about what would have happened to the hero in Haruhime if I had written it the way I originally thought. That's a very interesting point. Now, before we go continue, and I'm gonna make sure that if there's any spoilers, I mention it beforehand. But I think the thing is, right, with the Haruhime stuff, right? It is very interesting to see how it would have changed for sure, right? But I am actually curious, by this point, after receiving feedback from readers who said it was good, I wonder if they have like, and I don't know how it works in Japan, so you guys can let me know in the comments section, because I don't really look into the behind the scenes for light novels and stuff as much as I do for, like, say, anime production and stuff. I love the behind the scenes for anime productions, and, you know, looking into the bad and the good for that. Light novels is a little bit more far away from me. I don't really look into that, but it is interesting if they had like a focus group or something where they, you know, gave them some, you know, templates basically of Omori sensei's work for Volume 7 maybe, right, where they had the extreme version and the not so extreme version, the version that we ended up getting, and then they decided which one was good and which one was not good. Maybe I think that would be a fair way to go about it. But of course, that's a focus group. It's such a minor audience that we don't know exactly what everybody else would think, right? Kind of an interesting point. She becomes a super important character in Volume 18. They're referring to Haruhime. Now, Danmachi was originally serialized online and became popular, and it was submitted to the GA Bunko Grand Prize and won the Grand Prize. Was the web series written until the end of the story? No, in the main story, the Hellhound that appears in Volume 5 appears and is given a breath attack, and it ends with people saying this is the horror of the middle class. Worst cliffhanger. It was completely wiped out and nothing came out, so I think readers on the web had to wait about 2 or 3 years until the 5th volume of the main story came out. I'm really sorry. However, at the time, the fight against the Minotaur was like a big turning point for me. I thought I've written the fight against the Minotaur and I've done it. The readers' reactions were positive and I received supportive comments such as, why don't you try writing for a commercial magazine? So I decided to apply for the GA Bunko Award. Very nice. I think that's a great way to go about it, in all honesty. I think that's fantastic. At the time, there were an increasing number of cases in which editors picked up and published works that were serialized on the web. This was around the time of SAO, Konosuba. All of these were like web novels originally, and then they got transferred over into light novels and being published properly. But in the case of Danmachi, it was completely an application for a newcomer's award. Yes, at the time, various works were picked up by editors from posting sites. Reiki Kawahara's Axel World won the Dengeki Novel Award. Later, Sword Art Online was also published, and Sajima Mr. Sutomu's Irregular Magic High School was also published after being picked up from the internet. There seemed to be a sudden increase in the number of labels publishing online novels. But in my case, I thought it would be no good to wait there, so I applied for the GA Bunko Award, won the award, and made my debut. What a mad lad. Why did you choose the GA Bunko Award among the various newcomer awards, including the Dengeki Award? The reason is very simple. The application guidelines state that you don't have to delete manuscripts posted on the website. At the time, other labels were strict about that. If I deleted it and applied, the readers who had been reading it for a long time would think that it would be unpleasant, and I myself thought it would be uncool if it deleted it and was unsuccessful, so I sent it to GA Bunko. Very smart. That's a great way to go about it, to be honest. All right, let's take a look right here. All right. Was it rewritten? I've revised the manuscript and I was applying for the light novels newcomers award, so I read a lot of the winning works, and after that I felt I had to finish my work properly in one volume. I thought that part about the battle with the Minotaur that I'd written about in the web version would definitely not be included, and the part where he met Lily would not be included either. So I added a new story about the monster Philia where he fights a silverback and applied. Very interesting. Let's get into it. Let's see. Now, there might be some spoilers here, so I'm going to put a spoiler chapter here once again, so be careful if you're reading this next portion. Is that so? Come to think of it, the goddess Freya was also working behind the scenes at the monster Philia. In volume 18, there was a situation where Belle clashed with Freya Familia, but that foreshadowing was laid out from the beginning. In the web version, Freya acted a little bit more quietly behind the scenes, but in the main story, she began to move in a more trickster-like manner. In fact, the manuscript I submitted for the GA Bunko Grand Prize was about Belle helping Seer, this is Seer of course, at a monster Philia. However, the editor in charge at the time said to me, isn't this supposed to be Hestia, not Seer? I was worried about it, but I was convinced and decided to rewrite it when it was published. The relationship between Seer and Freya had already been established at the time, so I wrote it that it would be Freya's match pump. Wow. Oh my god, there's so many pages for this interview. There's so much here. Oh boy, this is going to be insane. This is going to be a very, very long video, it seems like. What works are important to the writer Fujino Omori? Alright, you applied for the Light Novel Newcomer Award, but have you been reading light novels for a long time? Actually, I was a child who wasn't good at reading, and I didn't read many books. I also had a hard time writing book reviews. I started reading a lot of novels serialized online, and I think I started reading them through derivative works. I was reading a lot of derivative works that were posted on Arcadia, the posting site that would be serializing Danmachi. The first time I tried to read the original was Sword Art Online on a site called World Gear. Interesting. So he started off with basically Sword Art Online. I found it fun and exciting. In terms of actual books, I read the Harry Potter series. My goat, my G, Full Metal Panic. I assume Full Metal Alchemist? Is there something called Full Metal No, Full Metal Panic is a different one. Okay. I was like, no idea what this one. I read a manga called Full Metal Panic and found out that it was originally a light novel. I learned about it, and I first learned about the existence of light novels in Full Metal Panic. It may have been from. I didn't even know this was a thing. This is a series I've never heard about. Full Metal Panic series has been resumed by Shoji Gato, and I was surprised to see that Sosuke Sagara is married to Kanami Chidori. I have no idea what this is, so I'm gonna move along from there. So apparently the opening line of this work is, I admired heroes. This is exactly the Belle from Danmachi. He's also a boy who came to Hawaii because he wanted to become a hero. I wonder if Belle inherits the DNA of Nave, the main character in Rainbows Running Around the Earth. Although it only lasted 3 volumes, it is a very important work for me, and when I think of the original scenery of light novels, this work definitely comes up. When I asked if I had a good feeling after reading it, I get confused, but if you're interested, I hope you'll give it a read. Anyways, it was an amazing book and a very important work for me at the time. Do you read light novels now? I read about famous places. Before applying for the GA Bunko Grand Prize, I read all the winning works. Manta Oku's Crawley, Nyaruko-san, etc. They are really great seniors. Nyaruko-san is based on Cthulhu, Chulu. I don't know how to pronounce it. I keep messing that pronunciation up, honestly. So it can't be called a fantasy, but the direction is quite different from Danmachi. In fact, even if I wanted to seal that, I wouldn't be able to. This is all thanks to Mr. Monta's talent. If you know the original of Cthulhu, it will be more interesting. And if you don't know about it, you'll want to look it up. Certainly, when you were serializing Danmachi on the web, did you have any intention of becoming a writer in the future? I guess that's because the Minotaur battle on the web got a great response. That's when my desire for approval was peaked. I thought I knew how much fun it was to write, but I felt very happy that people found my work, and I received comments from readers saying things like, why don't you try becoming a professional? And that gave me a courage to take on the challenge. Well, Danmachi is a novel classified as fantasy, but did you have any experience that served as the basis for it? You mentioned earlier that you were a fan of the Harry Potter series, and fantasy-style games were also becoming popular. I've never actively read books that are considered fantasy. I think that the fact that many of the novels serialized on the webs are fantasy based, I'm receiving this information indirectly. As for dungeon games, I don't know anything about wizardry, but I started playing Atrian Odyssey. This is a game I've actually heard about very recently, funnily enough, and I think it's made by, is it Atlas? I want to say it's Atlas or Sega or somebody like that, if I'm not mistaken. Is it? It is made by Atlas. Yeah. They recently came out with a remaster on the Nintendo Switch. It's the reason why I know this, and apparently it's also on Steam as well. But yeah, I recently heard about this. Yeah. The people who were first exposed to fantasy wrote novels, and the people who were influenced by it wrote web novels. I think I may have inherited something from like a genre, from a gene from them. Sorry, there are so many amazing people out there, and I feel like I was nurtured by them. It's a fantasy genre with a lot of history and many popular works. There are many discerning readers. Wasn't it scary to compete there? There was a time when I was writing derivative works of other works, and I thought that if I could write derivative works that would be appreciated by people who like the original work, then maybe the original work would also be successful. So what he's saying is here, when he says derivative works of other works, fan fiction, kind of, basically, is he's basically taken original pieces and he's written stories based on those effectively. I may have been spoiling it a bit, but if I have the ability to use a setting that would be recognized in a derivative work, I wonder if I could make use of it in original as well. It's not really fan fiction now that I'm thinking about it. Derivative, the way it works is like it's a derivation of it. So it's like the same concept, same idea, same genre, but in a different manner, basically, is the best way to put it. I wonder if I can make use of it in the original as well. At the time, I thought the hurdles for creating an original game would be so low that because you can freely create your own settings. However, if you don't really know the original work deeply and use it properly, you will get a lot of criticism. So I think you need to have the ability to think about it. That's true. Regarding the fantasy, I also wanted to incorporate the web novel trends of the time. I had a feeling that if it was a dungeon fantasy, it would be received well. As a result, you won an award and made your debut as a writer. But how far did you think you could go at that stage? I think this is the same for other writers, but after winning an award, you feel like you're bound to sell well, and you think, I'll just go with this one. That's what it felt like. He's already in a Tengu state. Looking back, I think I was truly a daredevil. This is similar to the story about the Minotaur fight, but at the time I had an overwhelming sense of omnipotence because I was recognized and even won the grand prize. I felt like I could be something different from other people. When I was a child, I never thought I wanted to be a writer, but after winning the award, I felt like I wanted to continue working hard at this. Fair enough. Touche. That's one way to go about it, to be honest. All right, for those who aspire to be novelists, read and write. Have you ever tried to keep writing or to keep selling? Were you confident that whatever you put out would be okay? This is also an embarrassing story, but I felt that way quite a bit. I think the source of my confidence was that I had one success experience when I started writing web novels. I felt that people would like it even more if they read about the Minotaur fight, which was well received. I had a mysterious sense of pride, thinking it's going to be even worse once I get to the third novel. And when the third novel came out, people told me it was interesting and amazing. I'm going to say amazing. It says interesting and interesting. I received various awards, and I was like, this light novel is amazing, and won first place in the new work category. I think Tengu's nose was even longer. His nose was broken in volume 10, the Xenos edition. I received a lot of fan letters from readers saying things like, why are you doing this, professor? It was the first time that I felt like I was running in the same direction as the readers and that I was learning about the world and people I no longer understand. Since you've come this far, I thought everyone would say they like the contents of the 10th volume, but it turns out that that's not the case at all. Wow. So apparently the 10th novel, volume 10, received a lot of like criticism from readers, it seems like, which I'm surprised by. I loved volume 10. I mean, it's quite interesting to me that this was the case, because volume 10 for me is very important to the franchise, and I understand why people were potentially against the idea of how volume 10 was portrayed and stuff, but I think it was super important and it set up so much for not only just Belle's development, but also Orario as a whole, and the whole thing with the monsters and stuff. I think it was very significant. Having said that, the Xenos arc was written because it was necessary, and it can be said that Belle's growth and expansion of the story of world were possible because of that development. The interviewer is on my wavelength, basically. That's right, the Xenos arc was a huge turning point for Belle and me. When I wrote volume 11, I really felt the same way as Belle. At the time, Belle was ostracized by the people of the town who threw stones at him, and I'm sure my readers are thinking, I wonder if Danmachi is no good anymore. Why would they do something like this? I stored up that frustration, and when I released it in the final battle against Astraeus, my reputation with the readers became good again. And I thought I was able to break through together with Belle. At the time, I really felt like I was linked to Belle. People said a lot of things to me, but I'm glad I stuck it out to the end and completed the Xenos arc. I don't know if this expression applies, but maybe I became an adult at the time. Starting from volume 12, there are many depictions of Belle's appearance changing. It's not cool for her to say it himself, or it's not cool for him to say it himself, but maybe that's where I got a glimpse of myself as a writer. I felt happy that as a reader to see how many people were saved and recognized as a result of you sticking to what you believe in and doing what you had to do even if you were hated. Thank you. Belle doesn't think that way, but I felt like, watch it now. I was quite happy that I was rewarded for that. Honestly, I credit where it's due. He stuck by his guns and did what he wanted to do most, and I think that's very important. From that point on, I started writing things about like, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fall. It may be fun and satisfying to live a life of continuous success, but I've started to portray myself as saying that it's okay to make mistakes, and if you're gonna make a mistake, try to make the right mistake. I think right and wrong has become an important word for me. There you go, coming back to the very start of the interview, of course, right? Please give some advice to people who are aiming to become novelists based on your own experience. I know this sounds really harsh, but my conclusion is already decided. Read, write. Only this. You will definitely improve by simply reading 10 times more than others and writing 10 times more than others. Also, do you want them to have some confidence? I really hate reading, and I would never be able to write book reviews anymore. I can't tell you how many times I got scolded by my teacher for quoting lines from that book. My grades in modern and classical literature were not at all good, but such a person is able to stand in a place like this. When you find what you like, you can't become Fujino Omori, but you can become you. And I can't say that you will definitely succeed, but you will definitely grow. That's such a good line, man. That's fair enough. Omori sensei with them words of wisdom, bro. Fair enough, fair enough. It means that you should believe in yourself and work hard. Even if you don't believe in yourself and get lost, it's completely okay. I think it's important to get lost. I also specifically think it's more important to be aware of what you like. When someone asks you to name your favorite work, you probably won't be able to name it right away. But if you're asked to name 3, you'll probably be able to name at least one of them right away. I think so. I think it's also important to remember at least to name 3 to 5 favorite works. Also, I think it's also a good idea to take note of what scenes you find enjoyable or what brought you to tears. Not only novels, but also manga, anime, and games. Just by remembering that, I think you'll be able to figure out what you want to write and what your special skills are. It's what Belle calls a firebolt. Firebolt. It's a really easy to understand example. If you know exactly what your strengths are, you will definitely be able to write a story no matter what you write, as long as you don't waver from that core. If the genres of reincarnation in another world and summoning to another world are popular, you might want to say that what I want to write is about supernatural battles. But even if you do it by reincarnation in another world or summoning to another world, these are isekais he's referring to, as long as you don't shift that axis, what you want to write will never change, even if the wrapping material changes. I think looking back on yourself when you were a child is very beneficial for you. I'm sure my old self can help me. Writing a diary may be the best option, but it may be a little difficult to do so. So the first thing you need to do is realize what you like. Speaking of Danmachi, a fan appreciation festival, Vesta party in Bonfire Hall, will be held on November 4th to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the original work. It's been a long time coming since I've had a real event, so I'm looking forward to it. Yoshitsugu Matsuoka is going to be there. Along with Matsuoka, there's going to be Inori Minase, Sayori Hayami is there, Akasaki, what's her name? Mikoto's voice actress is gonna be there. Haruka Chisuga is gonna be there. A lot of the voice cast is going to be there, so it's actually a pretty big thing, of course, right? So you can see right here, there are all the details here. There will be a fee required, like I said, 3,500 yen. Oh yeah, the list is right here. Chinatsu Akasaki, there you go. Akeno Watanabe, Saju Hana is also going to be there. It's going to be a big thing. So, of course, make sure you guys, if you guys are interested, I'll be leaving a link to this down below in the description so you guys can check it out for yourselves. But it's very, very cool. I'm very, very excited about it. I'm most likely going to be getting it as well, to be quite honest. But I'm not sure yet. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the interview. I'm going to go over the Reddit post in just a second, but I think this interview was fantastic in all honesty, especially the first page. I think the first page is what everybody's most interested in when it comes to Danmachi, right? Things like, of course, volume 18, the eye stuff, you know, Haruhime's stuff and all that jazz is very interesting and very curious, of course, right? And I'm actually quite interested to see what people think about, you know, Omori's thoughts in regards to those three things, because I feel like all three of those things are things that, you know, we as a community have been questioning for a very long time. Volume 18, you know, what was the situation behind that? Because a lot of people either hate it or like it, you know. Haruhime, you know, a lot of people wanted that original situation with Haruhime to be more extreme, more darker. Obviously, that's not what happened, right? And then finally, you know, Ice's backstory. When are we going to be getting that? And of course, a lot of people are looking forward to that still in the light novel series. And now we know when it's going to be coming out. So yeah, I'm quite curious to see what you guys have to say in regards to that, of course, in the comment section down below. Now, we'll be moving over to the Reddit post to just see what they have in terms of any other details that maybe the translation didn't really help out with. So, mind you, there will be spoilers from this point onwards, again, just to give you guys a bit of a warning. So, let's move over there and see what they have to say. Main points. Volume 18 has been rewritten 4 times before publication. We saw that. Ice Pass will be revealed in main story. SO will now be focused on Lufia. One more SO main story arc he wants to write, and then he's thinking of ending it there. MS ending has been decided a long time ago. MS is main series. There is a slight detour at the moment, and then volume 7 was supposed to be a bit darker and more serious. So yeah, they covered everything pretty much there. Let's read the personal thoughts here. After 4 rewrites, I would expect volume 18 to be better than it was. I disagree with that, because when you rewrite a novel, it doesn't necessarily equal better always. I don't think it's that's a fair way to put it. 4 rewrites means there was a lot of back and forth, not only between Omori and the editor, but if there are focus groups reading it, different, you know, perspectives come into play. You know, when you have other people reading your work and they're like, I don't know about this one, I think that's good, you know, and so on and so forth, you start muddling with it a lot more, right? In fact, I would say that the first rewrite would always be the better version, more often than not. The first or second rewrite is always the better version. The original work can also be a bit poor depending on the situation, of course, right? We know how Omori is as a writer. Sometimes he's a hit, sometimes he's a miss. He admits it himself, right? He admits it himself. And sometimes the editors can give good feedback, and sometimes they give bad feedback. You know, Lena being alive, we've all come to the consensus that it's a good thing that they did there, right? In the case of Haruhime, when the editor said it's a, you know, change it to be a bit more lighter, don't give her such a dark backstory, we said it was a bad decision, right? So there are moments here and there where the editors can play a good role and a bad role. And when you do 4 rewrites, there is always going to be that situation where people are going to see flaws in the story because, you know, you're going through and chopping or adding stuff that may not have been necessary in the first place. I still like volume 18, don't get me wrong, I still like volume 18, but I get a lot of people's frustrations with it as well at the same time. But I disagree with it, of course, like I said, but I get it, and I feel like it's not a fair way of saying like, oh, rewrites equals better novel always. It doesn't make that's not the case. I think SO should have ended with volume 12. It was the perfect ending. I agree. If he wanted to focus on Luffy, it should have been a couple of Familiar Chronicle volumes. No, I think, okay, so yes and no. I think, yes, they could have probably just shifted Loki Familiar to be Familiar Chronicles instead. Maybe Lafia Chronicles more so. But I feel like with Sword Art Online being Loki focused anyways, right? I think volume 12 could have been an ending for the arcs in Sword Art Online. But then you have individual books focusing on certain bits and bobs from the Loki Familiar. I think that would have been absolutely fine. But yeah. I'm kind of curious about Volume 7 original plan, but I guess we'll never know that. Yeah, I mean, we know it's going to be a darker story. It would have been a much darker story. Probably Haruhime would have actually, you know, been a proper prostitute and stuff like that. And then the slight detour, I hope it's not going to be more volumes like 19. I disagree. 19 was good. I don't know about that one, Chief. 19, I like 19. 19 was world building, and also we saw dungeoneering, and we saw Bell's development as a captain. A lot of people complained about it. I disagreed with it for a very, very long time, and a lot of people were saying, oh no, Lily's the captain. Lily's just, you know, showing up Bell and stuff like that. Bell doesn't seem to be the captain of his own Familia. And we see it for the first time properly in light novel volume 19. And I feel like that is exactly, and I love the fact that Omori sensei did that as well, by the way, because I remember so many people said it in the comment section of my video as well as in the Reddit, and then he just goes and does it in volume 19, which is a bit of kind of coincidental, I must admit. But yeah, I think it was a cool way of showing that Bell is still the captain of the Hestia Familia. It's just that Lily is the commander and is the tactician of the Hestia Familia. So of course she's gonna be having direct control over, you know, Bell at Vanguard, Ryu, and you know, whenever Ryu participates with the Bell, you know, Hestia Familia and whatnot. Where she places herself. Mikoto, where would she be placed? Wealth, where would he be placed? Where would Haruhime be placed? Where would any other Familiar members as well? Daphne, Cassandra, whenever they're part of the expeditions and stuff, where would they be placed? And so on and so forth. So for me, I think volume 19 was well done, in all honesty. Personally, I disagree with that statement that, you know, there's no more volumes like 19, because I want, if we are going to be taking a detour, volumes like 19 are exactly what we need, in all honesty. And also we got more expansion on, you know, the world outside of Orario, not just Orario itself. And again, we need more of that, because the threat isn't in Orario. The big endgame threat is not in Orario, it's outside of Orario. So we need to know more about the outside of Orario and not just the inside of Orario. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say down below. Yeah, I mean, if you guys want me to do a community reaction to this, if you guys leave enough comments, we might do one. But let me know what you guys would like to see in regards to this video, and if you want to see a continuation of this video in some way, shape, or form. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please be sure to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.